I think we're live.
Yeah.
Cool.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us today at the Filmocracy Fest panel on what writers and what directors look for in the industry. And I'm really glad to have my panelists here. I will take a quick moment and I'll have them on who they are and their role in the film and TV production world, and we'll take it from there. Can we start with? Should we start with with Leilani?
Yes, that's fine. My name is Leilani Downer, and I'm a writer, producer, and also director. I got my start working in television, so kind of grew up there in the industry. I've worked on such shows as Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, kind of like 90s shows, comedy, family type shows. And then from there, I segued into writing more feature film material. I've directed short films. That's where my directing experience comes from. And my most recent project is on Netflix right now. It's a show called Julie and the Phantoms. It's directed by Kenny Ortega, and it's in a young cast, and it is currently streaming. It started streaming in September. So we're waiting to hear about a second year pickup. But that's it. Basically, I continue to write and in television and feature films as well.
Cool. My name is Julian Silver. I also kind of all over the place. I started in the industry as an international film sales agent, packaging indie movies and selling them abroad. And then together with my writing partner, we went on to write for TV, a CBS show called SEAL Team, and we sold our own show. And so I've written for TV on the development side on staff, and then now feature-wise, like I'm contract out to different studios. So we're doing something for Amazon right now, and another thing for Jennifer Lawrence and the studio behind her, and then kind of smaller independent features as well. But it's a year that has been heavily feature driven for me. So all genres, all sorts of dabble in everything.
Great, thank you. And finally, our new guest, Nathan. Could you take a second to introduce yourself?
Hi, I don't know what happened. It was working and then it stopped working. My name's Nathan Sutton. I'm a writer and director and actor, and because of all that, I'm also a producer. So yeah, I don't know how in depth everybody was getting, but I started out acting, and then by means of necessity have ventured into every other aspect of the film world, and now I just consider myself a film worker.
Wonderful, thank you. And I'll just take a quick second to introduce myself. Hi everyone, I'm Sunny Vachher. I am co-founder of Hollywood Casting and Film, which is a casting and production company. We've created a platform that actually connects productions with talent nationally around the country. And we've been based in Hollywood and Los Angeles for the past 8 years. Yeah, it's been 8 years. And I'm also a producer in film and as well as in television. I also produce for TED Talks. If you guys follow TED Talks, I've produced quite a few of them here on the West Coast, as well as I've been producing features and as well as documentaries. And so today we have come together because we are all working in Hollywood as writers, producers, as directors, as well as actors. And so I want to get the conversation started about, what it is that we look for when we're going into a production and we're going into casting, especially from the writing aspect and from the casting aspect, from talent wise. When you're writing your projects, if you're directing, what it is that you're looking for from talent, like some specifics that we can discuss. And then also I want to jump into later on how the environment, in the industry is changing and how it's becoming so much more important for us to be more diverse, in our writing as well as our casting, as well as our basically just being diverse and as inclusive as we can be for the productions that we're part of. So I'd love to start with, if I can ask Julian. Julian, I think you've also done some acting as well.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
so from the talent side of things, when you are going into auditions, is there something that you're looking for from like productions?
Realistically, I guess at this point, I kind of geared my auditions towards the TV and studio features because they tend to be quicker, they tend to be more efficient, and I'm trying to be sensitive to time. So I really don't know if I look beyond just sort of like what are the productions that I think are going to run the smoothest. That's kind of like the main thing.
Okay, I tend to feel it's it's sort of a give and take for both. I feel like now we're in a place where talent is looking for a lot more really like very character driven projects, beyond just a commercial product, but they're looking for something that has a lot of depth in it. And because I come from the casting technology background, and I've seen this happen, year after year. We see actors come into our studio for so many auditions, and there are thousands of projects that get cast, throughout the year. But there's always this notion of the actor wanting something that's a lot more sensible, and something that's going to basically spark their future career. And as well as I believe actors are looking for stories that actually have a meaning and have a purpose, rather than just wanting to jump into pretty much anything. And that's what's changed in the recent years. It's become a lot more about how can I bring something amazing to the table, as an actor, or as a, if I'm talent. Like, what am I going to be adding to the production? Like, how am I going to be adding like value to the production? And so that's become a very important topic. Is there anything that you'd like to share with us, Nathan, or if you have anything, Leilani, on that?
Yeah, I think I'm primarily an actor. That's where the base of my income comes from, and it's a little bit of a two-sided sword in a sense. Like, it's nice to want those things, but at the end of the day, you're like, you got to pay your bills, and so you're going to go to wherever somebody's going to pay your bills. That said, I think the thing that we're really looking for is trust. And networks and studios buy that trust very easily because they have a track record and they have a budget that makes you feel like you're going to be safe, both creatively and physically at this point in time. I'm currently on a show right now. I was telling Leilani earlier that I'm on a show right now and I'm quarantined. And if that's a YouTube show or a independent movie production, you don't know what you're going to get into in those kind of situations. So, like, part of me leaving my family and coming to do this job is knowing that I'm going to be safe. So there's trust that I think is the first thing that comes to mind right now, and that branches out into creatively. I think that the vast majority of us don't get the luxury of choosing projects. The projects choose you. You show up and you do what it is that you do, and if you're the right one for the job, you either take the job or you don't take the job. But choosing creativity, you have to make that on your own for the most part, and then otherwise you're choosing to go out for a job, I think, is how I kind of view it.
Great.
And always on, in terms of a writer being or a producer being in the casting room, what we look for in terms of actors is just someone, it's almost like what Nathan said, the trust that whoever gets the part can uplift the part for the project and can really embody the character that you want portrayed on screen. So when an actor comes in, that's what you're looking for, is someone who can, you can trust that, if that project is in their hands, that they're going to carry it correctly or in the right creative way. So I always tell people that when it comes to casting, I always am rooting for that actor who comes through the door, because I want them to be the one. You know, that's what we all want. You know, it makes their job easier. So, you know, it's just coming through that door and or doing that eco-cast in a way that, you know, you show that your knowledge, I guess, of the written word, understanding what the project is going after, and then you know, delivering on that end.
Yeah, I'll just add one more thing, which is I kind of off of Nathan's, like the practicality of it, like the reality of like those parts that you think are going to change your careers or anything like that. Those are lists of people who get offered to, and you're having those discussions. Like there are no real auditions. It's very much like, who can we attach to help make our movie, to help make our TV show? It's incredibly name driven. And so those parts are like, even before, like I'm on a pitch for a studio, we already kind of have our short list of like the people who would play the lead role. Script's not even written yet. So it's just like start so much earlier than I think we think. And it doesn't necessarily happen in that room, at least not for the bigger roles.
It sounds gross, but it is a business, and certain people drive the business, whether it's the director, the producer, or the actor. Most of the time it's the actor, and everything else sort of gets funneled down around that. And that's it. As an act, when I started directing, it made acting a hell of a lot easier, because you get to see that it really doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do, you're either right for the role and you're prepared, or not, and there's no hard feelings about that. There was some movie, I can't remember the name of the movie, but they have this quote where they say, if you're 1 in a million in LA, then there's 20 people just like you. And that's kind of what it's like to go out on every audition, you know?
So would you say that, you know, since you brought up the aspect of like the business, you know, side of things for acting, and yeah, you know, given that, you know, there might be 20 of us, you know, in a million, and because that's so closely related to the acting world, do you find it necessary to like go out, you know, on your own to create like a special relationship with the writer or the producer or the director, like reach out, you know, beyond just the audition or beyond just like the casting call, and try to, you know, try to get to know them so that when you walk into the audition room, or when you submit a self-tape, you have more of a better chance because you have that back and forth, you know, conversation with them already about the project?
I personally don't. I think that one of the things I was saying about trust is that it works both ways too. When you walk into a room, they're not only hiring the actor, they're hiring somebody that they can spend 14 hours a day with and not feel like it's going to be weird for anybody involved. And so part of what I think it just sucks being an actor, because you're always depending on somebody else's approval to do anything. And so that inevitably makes desperate people. And when you're a desperate person, it's not attractive to anybody else in the room. And all they want is to see somebody who is confident and correct for the role. And that's really all it comes down to. And so I think if those relationships develop naturally, then that's great. But if I were approached outside of it, it would feel inauthentic. And then it's sort of, I mean, nobody wants anybody to want anything from them. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just sort of like, I feel like as an actor, you have to know when you're being, when you're being desperate, and just know that that's not attractive to it's not a hireable skill, you know?
I think that there are things that you can do organically. Like, for example, if you get a part on a show or on a movie, you know, do a great job. And then maybe, you know, you're trying to build a relationship with that production or that you know, writer or director, you know, sending like a note thanking them for the opportunity or something like that. Do those small inroads rather than feeling like you have to create this big relationship with someone. If you do a good job, you know, people are memorable. and you can look back and say that actor, that actress was amazing. I'm going to work with them again. So it's like finding organic ways to do it rather than, as Nathan said, become that kind of like a stalker in a sense, or really pursue.
I've been that guy.
Well, I've been on that side of things where I've been stalked, quote unquote. But I myself have taken it very positively, and I think in some cases it may work for some. It may work for some actors. I think for the most part, I also agree with all of you that it's not something that we should be bothering someone about, and more so just have the trust. Because I know, for all my productions, when I've been in casting rooms, I've been there because I'm there to trust somebody to take on the role and actually and just be and play beautifully, as well as for someone to come in and kind of be as natural as they can, with the content, and not come too prepared or too memorized or too well put together, because we want to see something that's raw talent. And I think raw talent really makes a very big difference when you're in casting as well. So yeah, I definitely agree with you guys on that. When you guys are writing projects, and this, I can start with you, Leilani. So are you looking to fill certain criterias, knowing that we're in a world where it's really important for us to have a very to have a diverse cast, and so do you hold yourself with that thought, and you write with that thought in your mind that, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm quite diverse in the cast. I'm going to hit all different types of backgrounds that I can. Is that something that you generally do, or is that something that you or like writers nowadays are being they're being asked to do because of the new inclusion and the new new requirements?
Well, I am very mindful of it, and I think a lot of us have gotten there. When even before all of the things we've been going through, all of the movements, I always thought that if I didn't write those characters, who would write those characters? Now, when you're in television, it's different. You're a writer for hire. You're writing their characters, and you know what you're going into. It's when you bring in the supporting cast that you can mix it up a little bit. When you're writing your own feature films, of course, you can decide how diverse the characters are for personalities that normally don't get seen on screen. But definitely, I am very aware of it, and I try to write in a way where it could go either way. Like you could cast the best actor, and it could go either way. And there are other times when I'm very deliberate and saying that this character has to be this person. But yeah, I've always kind of thought, if I didn't write those characters, who would? But now we're getting into an age where more people are writing diversity, so that's great, I think.
How do you think that since you have a pretty range, you've got a pretty long range of work under your belt, and so from the time when you were writing and you were producing for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air to the very most recent show on Netflix, Julie and the Phantoms, like, what do you think has changed from like the writing aspect of things, and as well as what do you think has changed from writing for talent as well?
Well, I know that the writing has definitely changed. Even the way we write has changed for that smaller medium of television. So, you're able to do a little bit more in terms of dialogue and being a little bit more raw, I guess, in terms of dialogue and things like that. Television has always told strong stories. And if you look back on, even on Fresh Prince, we kind of tried to cover some strong issues from time to time. But I think that more and more, as there's a lot of content out there, and you're always hearing people saying, have you seen this show, or do you know about this show? And it's things that get past us. So I think when it comes to television, it's trying to figure out what can we create that is fresh and new, and people will want to come back again to see, because we don't have those three networks. When I started out, there were only three networks, and people were talking about what was on CBS last night. Now, people are saying this is over here and that's over there, and did you catch this? So it's just being, in the writing at the computer, you have to be very creative, and you have to kind of go the extra mile to get garner that attention. And Julie and the Phantoms is one of those shows that combines music and dance and narrative. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, it's a pretty good show. I actually just started watching it. Great. So Julian, let me ask you. From the producing standpoint, what's the most important thing to you when you are working with talent, as well as when you yourself are on set and you are directing, and if you're producing, what are some of the key things that you look for the talent as well as for your crew? I think that's important too. Is to talk about the fact that we as producers are always working really hard to bring as many people together who are creative. So what's your take on being as diverse as we can on set from the producing standpoint?
Yeah, it's something that we think about from the very inception, right? The writing period, when you're thinking about who your leads are. That it's a constant conversation with me and producers. The other producers I work with, the other writer I work with, right? And I feel like there are these questions up just in terms of like the COVID of it all and how that's also affected like the things that we write and the things that we produce, right? Which is just you have to be more selective because it's a 30% premium on your budget. And so the things that are actually going to get made, the things that you actually commissioned, right? Like those are to your point about like creative drive and meaning and representation, like those questions have to be answered, and have to be answered in like a really like passionate way. Because if you're not, it is a business, but it's also like we're at the point now where there are a lot of creators, there are a lot of different voices, and if we're going to throw an enormous amount of money behind making something, it's got to add to the conversation in some way or another. But COVID, I think, has only drilled in. COVID, along with everything else that the U.S. and the world is going through, has helped us drill in on what we want to be saying with this project, right. Whether that's on the talent side or on the narrative itself.
Right. The question that we just received, the very first one, how has COVID affected your work in terms of bringing actors to your projects, from timelines to digital constraints? I recently just completed a production, and to have it and to go through it during the COVID time was probably one of the hardest things to produce and to bring together. And I think the fact that like bringing actors to set is one thing, but I think bringing actors to set during COVID is a really big issue at the moment. A lot of productions are very careful about how long their days are for shooting, as well as how long their like entire production is shooting. So for me, it was a short film, and even with the short film, I had to really be very careful about how many days we're shooting. We had a 2 to 3 day schedule, but even then, because of COVID, there are time constraints for actors, and where a general day might be anywhere from 7 to 10 hours per day of shooting, it's now brought down to 6 hours. From 6 to 8 hours is actually max. That's for actors now, because of COVID. So I hope that helps. That helps shed some light on that question. It's we as producers, we as filmmakers, definitely want to continue, and we want to bring more talent out to the set. We just have to be very careful about how we do it, and of course, follow all of the COVID protocols, go through testing. I know that, as a producer, it's my job to not only have the cast and crew get tested prior to filming, but then you also have to have COVID testing on set on day one. And then if you're going to be on a schedule that is continuous, then it needs to be, then the COVID testing needs to take place once every 3 days on set for all cast and crew.
I'm going through it right now. Both sides that we're producing a commercial, and our budget is shot up 30% just to deal with COVID related expenses. And right now on this show as an actor, and from a production side, I know it's a nightmare because someone tested positive on set. I was near that person. And so there, as Disney's rules, I'm forced to quarantine for 14 days and then we can pick up shooting again. The show's working around me not being able to be there. And I know that that's a headache for them, but if you're on a travel job, that's somebody that has to stay in a hotel and you're paying their per diem and their day rate and everything. Like that's a nightmare scenario for productions, but the alternative is you don't work. And then as an actor, it's I'll be honest, it's a different world, and it's something we're all going to have to get used to. But part of what you sign up for, at least what I got into acting for, is the connection of relating to other people and telling stories. And we're in this space now that you get on set and literally everyone is wearing a mask. And if it's a crew member, they're wearing a mask and a visor. And we don't say, you don't take your mask off. The actors don't take their masks off until action. And the second they say cut, the mask goes right back on. And if you're not on camera, they're having you wear your mask, which doing a scene with another person just sort of becomes, it's different than what you sign up for. And you have to work a little bit harder to make those connections. But I think that everybody is doing the best they can to make something, because the alternative is we're not going to do anything, and we're learning. We'll get through it, and I think it's going to look different in a year from now.
I also think from a writer's point of view, in terms of creating the script, you have to think of other ways of doing certain things and not putting the actors in compromising positions because of COVID. So that is an issue. And I think that a lot of productions that we're starting up, we're trying to figure out how much of the COVID story to tell in their storylines. Because you have to consider, is the audience kind of tired of hearing about COVID? Do they want to see some form of escapism that still has COVID issues in it? That kind of a thing. So I think a lot of the shows that have come back into production, they are talking a little bit about COVID here and there, or showing it. But yeah, the writing, it's an issue figuring out how to navigate during this time.
Yeah, it's definitely something that was very expensive for us as well. Just being on, being in production, having to go through the whole process of COVID testing, and on top of that, having to find a lab that would work specifically with your production, so that they're in charge of getting all the testings done before, during, and after the production. And it is very expensive. It does shoot up a lot of the budget for the producers. Generally in this business, we all are working so hard to be able to come up with the finances and be able to come up with the budget for our own projects. And so when you're hit with something like COVID, it takes away 1/4 of your project just away from you, just because that cost goes into the testing and into taking care of the set being as clean and as sanitized as you can. But hopefully that will change, now that we're hearing that there's a vaccine coming, and hopefully that will change the way that the production world goes back into filming. Yeah. Thank you.
Do you want to change some of those questions?
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to jump on the next one. So does having a show on Netflix give you the edge to get more projects on Netflix? Because that's a question for you, Leilani.
Yeah. Well, it is about relationships, and, it's great to have that connection to Netflix so that you can talk to those who are in development to create more projects. So, it's always the case. The studio you're working for, you kind of have a little bit of an in. So, I'm trying to develop, like most other writers in Hollywood and create more projects. I've sold, a couple of pilots through the years. So it would be nice to get something solid on Netflix. So that's all my own. Yes.
Work begets work. The more you do, the more you keep going. And, I think there's this fallacy within Hollywood that you get a big break. And I don't know anybody that's had a big break. You just work and you work and you work. And then 20 years go by and you're like, I have a career. I didn't even know that I had a career. And you're still struggling every day, but the struggle gets a little easier. And hopefully the people that you have surrounded yourself with, you all kind of come up and grow together. But it's people do win the lottery in Hollywood, but it's not nobody that I know. And we know a lot of people after 15 years of working in the industry. It's like anything else, you don't get handed, you don't become the CEO of another company. You have to just keep working and working and working and working. And before you know it, you build something,
True.
Absolutely. I have to agree with that. I think, working in the industry, I think becomes more like we're so involved in what we're creating, what we're writing, what we're producing, and because time flies by so quickly with these things, it's not like you start a project today and it's done tomorrow. It does take so much of our time that time flies. And yeah, like you said, Nathan, before you know it, you've already had a career. And you've gone in about a decade and you've done so many different things that you even forgot that you did because you keep moving on to the next project one after another.
Some of it you want to forget.
Right. Sometimes.
Very true.
Okay, let's take the next question. It's actually, this one's already been answered. Has COVID influenced what projects you write or how you write them? We already had a word from you, Leilani, on that. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I mean, I think that basically COVID is affecting the writing right now. But I don't think it'll always be, hopefully one day COVID and our scripts will date our scripts. It'll be a time that we were in. So that's what we look forward to.
I think it's affecting it less from a storyline standpoint and more from do we need extras in this scene? Can we go? What locations can we control? Those elements are becoming much more important for the time being.
Are the characters in bed together or not?
Right.
So,
Yeah. And actually, SAG-AFTRA has pretty strict rules on when you submit a script to get approved if you want the clearance to shoot. They have pretty strict rules on what the talent can and cannot do on set because of COVID. And one of the things is if they are to be in bed, then there has to be some sort of boundary that has to be made to safety. I read these in their documents, and it's something. And then the other thing that I also experienced just recently as well, and I think you just brought this up, Nathan, is just the extras. Because productions are in need of extras. What's happening is a lot of the productions that are in need are actually now reaching out to personal family members and friends who they've been around, who they know are safe and clean and have stayed healthy, and they're asking them to be a part of the production rather than going out and finding extras who they've not seen or met before just for the safety purposes. I know I did that for my production too because we were kind of worried about with COVID, there's no way to tell what's going to happen tomorrow or what's going to happen today. So that was something I followed for my own production. Was I reached out to family and friends who I knew would be comfortable being around me and my production, who they knew already, and because we had that kind of collaboration, it was easier to have them on set and have them be extras than to go out and than to go out and actually hire more actors and have to go through a SAG-AFTRA rules and regulations of why you have extras and how many extras are being allowed and have they all been tested. Though we got everyone tested on that cast or crew, family member or friend. But just the fact that if there's productions who are requiring it, it is a very difficult task to try to facilitate. Cast is one thing, but when you come to the extras cast, it's a very difficult process. You have to go through a lot with SAG-AFTRA to get it approved, and they have a limit of how many people can join a certain scene or a certain set if there are extras. Great. So let's move on to the next question. Are you seeing studios and distributors actively interested in more diverse content, or just trying to meet a quota of some sort? So from my standpoint, I work with a few studios so far, and I can definitely say that they are being very active about being quite diverse in content, as well as they're being good about the representation. Stepping into like the LGBTQ content, stepping into like basically working with people from different countries, bringing filmmakers from different countries, writers and also producers as well as actors. Studios are not only being required, but I feel like they're also on this changing environment where they're learning that their reach is actually now a lot more global than it was before. Now that we have studios like Amazon, Netflix, and so many other platforms that are streaming, they have like a worldwide reach, and so for them it's important to be able to have content that speaks to the audience that they're reaching out to. Say in a country like, if they're going like back to India or something. So they have to have that. They have to have a team. They have to have people in place who are able to write that kind of content and be able to create that kind of content. Bring that culture into the writing, into the production as well. So from my standpoint, I think they are actively seeking to create that content to be able to connect people from all around the world, and not just try to meet the quota. Although that used to be, and that may be in some cases, but that used to be a requirement in the recent past so many years of having to meet the quota. But now it's become more that they want to and not that they need to.
I think it's a mistake to think of it in terms of a quota thing, and more it's something to be aware of, and it needs to be aware of from a storytelling standpoint, not necessarily from a hiring standpoint. That's how I look at it. I think that we're all trying to tell stories, and let's tell stories from all walks of life and be truthful to those stories, rather than let's we have XYZ, let's make our quotas, because I think that's when, at least as an audience member, I start to feel manipulated in that way. I'd much rather just see honest stories of whoever's they are. And I think that's more on the distributors and the studios to proactively find those stories and those storytellers to fit those.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely key for studios. And I think it's key for all of us too, is to try to find the honesty in our work.
And I will say you're absolutely right. I think the other side of that coin is audience members have to seek out what they want to watch, because marketers, they just respond to where people spend their money. And if there's stories that you want to see, then you have to actively seek them out, and people respond to that. It comes down to where you spend your money. Right. So if you want to see different stories, you have to pay to see those different stories, and then all of a sudden the game changes overnight.
Yeah, now the audience is changing so fast, because I've seen films, like I've seen feature films get made, go to festivals, and then because they're very specific topics and they're not as broad, of a topic, not as broad that they can really get the consumption of the audience all over the world. I've seen them struggle to get the distribution, but now with with the ever changing, I think the storytelling aspect of being trying to being very diverse, being very inclusive, and actually telling stories that have a meaning and purpose. Those stories are now actually being seen as a pretty hot property, because I think it's all thanks to the streaming platforms that are actually helping change that, helping break those gates for so many filmmakers. I feel like a lot of filmmakers now are not they're not they no longer live in fear of, okay, I can't write this type of content because like no one's going to care for it. Now they're so open-minded and they're so free to write what they want to write, tell the really deep stories they want to tell, because they know that somebody will certainly have an interest. That they have an audience who actually cares. They have an audience who will definitely watch it, and it's become a lot more simpler to get films with like distribution nowadays. And I've seen film festivals as well, really be able to open more gates to stories that are beyond just like from like the marketability standpoint. So thanks for bringing that up, Nathan. I think that's something that we should definitely address, is how it's changing, like not just studios, but I think how if you're a filmmaker yourself and you're not with a studio, you are independent. It's still very difficult to go into production, have your film made and get seen and get and have it be on stage. However, it is a lot more accepted now for filmmakers to create stories that kind of that go beyond just the box. And studios are actually pushing it themselves nowadays. There's so many series on Netflix now that are something that you would probably have never seen before, because they didn't allow the writers to come in and actually write that content. So we as filmmakers are in a really, really great time where we get to speak and we get to talk about things that we care about, and not just because we're trying to get a project made for a studio that is paying us to write, but also because we care and because we're so passionate about the storytelling aspect. Okay, so let's take our next question. Is it worth finding some cheap IP to license and write about? Julian, do you want to take a stab on that?
Sure. Depends on what the IP is. Like, I don't know if there's a point to doing that just for the exercise of doing it. But if you find some IP that you're excited about and you want to write about, like, maybe it's helpful. More likely it's not, like the IP that's really carrying weight is sold before it even comes out, So there are people whose jobs are dedicated to finding the IP that you're thinking of that might help sell something. But if it's a spark for a story and it is something that is really going to get you going, then definitely try and find some IP.
I think there's no real shortcuts to any of it. And if you're going to make a project, you have to be prepared to live with it for years. And that's not something that I think you understand until you go through it, but it's literally years of your life that you're putting into telling whatever the story is. So if you're going to throw a dart at a IP, I'd make sure it's one that you really want to spend your time with, because you're living with it. You're the only one who's going to fight for it. So you better look.
Right.
I agree.
I would say to that is, there's really no simple way to finding some cheap IP. It's, the cheap IP, I don't think that even exists. From my standpoint, I think what it can be is is just finding your personal passion, things that you as a filmmaker care about, that you want to write about, that you want to talk about, that you want to see being represented, in the in film and the television. I think that's where you get started, because and like you said, Julian, and also Nathan, that that it does come down to something that you live with, and so therefore it does come down to passion. It has to come down to something that you love, care about. So it's not really worth finding some cheap IP that you could find anywhere online. I'm sure there's people that are out there, selling some sort of cheap IP to license, but in the end of the day, it's your production and your name goes on it, and so it's your reputation. And if you you want to be proud of what you make, and you want to be able to talk about it and tell the next person right next to you and the person next to them that, hey, I did this and I want you to watch it.
I think to Julian's point too, it doesn't really give you much of an advantage, because the stuff that is coming with an audience that is going to turn into a Amazon show or Netflix show has already been swapped up, so that you're not cutting a line by just having any old IP.
Right. Thank you. And then I'll move on to our last question. From a producer standpoint, do you take a look at all projects that get sent to you, or just pitches from literary agents and managers? Who wants to start on that one?
I recently got a project sent to me to read, and it was unsolicited. And I make it a rule kind of not to do that. I will look at projects from friends, or if there's a relationship there, without going through an agent or manager. But it's too hard, because ideas are very a treasured thing, and so you don't want to read somebody's project and even have the sense that this idea was taken in some way from them. I don't know. There's probably a better way to say that, but basically, I tend to make it a rule not to take unsolicited projects because it's too confusing.
I have a production company. I don't even read. People will send emails, and I won't read them. Similar reasons. It's also you have to think of it. This is a business, and I'm not going to go into business with a complete stranger on anything. So that's aside from the fact that we're busy doing our own projects and trying to get them off the ground. And so it would be different if I was in another place to have unlimited cash flow and choose whatever projects I wanted to choose. But for me, no, I'm invested in my own projects with my team of people that I surround myself with, because they're the people who I want to go into business with, basically.
Yeah, it's hard even for a literary agent to get someone's attention, right? I get sent a lot of stuff for adaptation from agencies generally, and it's this is cool, but who am I working with? To Nathan's point, it's am I just gonna? It's just too. I'd much rather hear something from my friend and be like, cool, yeah, well, let's go do that for 3 years, than random.
I actually get a lot of. I get a lot of emails from a lot of people, and people will generally send me emails with full scripts and full treatments and a lot of information that I really wish they wouldn't, because I feel like I can't do anything with it, and two, I prefer not to do anything with it, just because I feel, one, I don't know the person myself. And for me, it's important that I have a relationship with someone that I'm working with, jumping in it, so that way we can put our passion together and actually create something amazing. And but also, I this is something I think I should share is I don't know about you guys, but I get emails where I get scripts and people say, "Could you make me a star?" And I just can't answer those questions.
Those emails are people just want in, like as if there's some club to get into, and it's not how it works. And I've been in that place. I understand that feeling very well, especially as an actor. You feel completely helpless, and you are so much better off never sending that email and instead figuring out how to make your own project. My first movie we made for $12,000, and that's why I'm here today, because John put that in a film festival years ago, and that's why I continue to work, because you just make something, and then you just keep making something, and you keep making something, and you don't ask for permission to do it. You can ask other people for help, but you don't ask for permission. You just do it and keep going. You just keep going. That's all there is. That's the only advice I can give to anyone.
I think same goes for managers, as well as agents. It's not easy for them, either. When if you're with an agency and they're trying to pitch a project to their network of talent, their network of producers and writers and film directors, it's just as hard for them to bring a team together and to get that project, to have that project be put through the pipeline, and very often, a lot of these agents and so many managers are not able to make that happen. The whole packaging, concept, which had been around for years, worked in some ways and didn't work in so many more ways. And now it's at a place where packaging is no longer allowed, because of the need to be far more inclusive and therefore, so I hope that answers your question.
Well,
yes.
Packaging, just to be clear, just to clarify, packaging is allowed. Packaging, taking a fee for packaging television is not allowed. So the concept of packaging is still alive and well. So like an agency is packaging our movie, so they give it to Cynthia Erivo. Cynthia Erivo attaches, then they give it to a different producer, they build it out with their clients, but then they're taking a commission on the movie and not from the studio. So it's just a matter of alignment with the clients. It's like, we should commission the clients rather than the studios or the networks or something like that. Just it's a confusing thing. But,
Yes, thank you very much. So I think those are all of our questions. If there's any more questions, we're here for a couple minutes. But if not, then I just want to say thank you guys for joining this panel, having this conversation, and just taking the time to kind of go deep into what it is that we're looking for, from the film and TV industry, and how things are changing for us, how things are changing for actors, with COVID in place, and hopefully when COVID is gone, things will go back to normal for all of us, and we'll be able to create a lot more content. And so thank you so much for joining, and thank you, John, and thank you, Paul, for being our really super wonderful host for this morning. And for our viewers who are here, could you guys let us know where we can find you online on social media, if any of our friends want to follow you, or check out your work?
Well, I'm on Twitter as well as Instagram. So it's basically my name, at Leilani Downer. So if you want to follow me there.
I'm going to type that so that we can... Leilani Downer.
Yeah. Twitter or Instagram.
Great. And Nathan, where can we find you?
My company is Mohawk Street Productions. On Twitter, it's at MohawkST. And I think we have an Instagram account, but my wife does that. I'm kind of a ghost on social media stuff.
Okay. And finally, Julian, where can we find you, sir?
Not really a social media guy. So.
What? Come on, it's 2020.
I know. I just don't do it.
We have one panelist who doesn't social media at all, but that's okay. Hopefully next year when we have this panel, you'll be on social media by then. And guys, if you're looking to find me, you can find me on Instagram or on Twitter. I am at iSunny. I'm most active on my Instagram. And you can also drop me an email if you have any questions. I'll drop my email address. I'm happy to help. Right. Thank you so
Terrific.
much. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all
John.
for coming. Julian, Leilani, Nathan, Sunny, thank you guys. This was amazing.
Thank you.
And just so everybody knows, this is being recorded, so any of your fans that want to check it out will be able to see it on our on-demand in our on-demand theater. So we'll make sure everybody gets word. This is great stuff, and it's what people need to hear about, right? Things are changing. So thank you for all your great work. Join us for some of the rest of the panels and screenings, and there's a happy hour from 5 to 7. Hit the saloon, and thanks to Hollywood Casting and Film for supporting this panel, and we'll be tracking you down. Julian, I'm going to tell everybody how they can find you just for kicks.
That would be helpful. Yeah, I'd like to find you too, Julian.
Why don't you give us your physical address?
I'll make sure that the double secret passcode is given to this group. All right. Thank you all again.
Method, two-factor authorization.
Right. That's right. All right, everybody.
All right.
Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.